While positioning layers in 3D space can be fun and exciting, it's a lot more interesting when you actually start creating true 3D geometry. So that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. And what makes that possible is the Cinema 4D renderer. Go to the timeline and select layer 1. And if you look on the right side in the switches panel, you'll notice 3D has been enabled. Go ahead and press P to open position, and notice it's moved 90 pixels closer to us on the Z-axis. Now, if you collapse layer 1 and open up its options, we have transform options. And if we collapse the transform options, we have material options, but we don't have any geometry options. So let's click on the words Change Renderer. That'll open the composition settings to the 3D Renderer tab. If you click on the drop-down, you could choose Cinema 4D. Go ahead and do that, and then click OK to set Cinema 4D as the renderer. Now we have full access to our geometry options. Go ahead and open the geometry options, and since this was an Illustrator layer, I have an option for curvature. Click on that percentage parameter and drag it to the right, and let go, and you notice it's created a curve to the layer. If you increase the number of segments, it will smooth out that curve. In order to more clearly see this, select layer 1 and press R to open the rotation orientation settings, and scrub on the Y rotation parameter, and here you can see the layer is bent in a curve. Go ahead and press Ctrl Z a few times until you get back to the original flat layer. Let's convert this so we can extrude true 3D data. With layer 1 selected, go up to the layer menu and choose Create Shapes from Vector Layer. That will give me a shape layer. And while we're at it, let's do the same for layer 3. Select layer 3, and instead of going up to the layer menu, just right-click or control-click on the layer and choose the same option. Create Shapes from Vector Layer. Move the newly created shape layer up underneath layer 1 so they're both together. With layer 2 selected, hold down Shift and click on layer 1 so both layers are selected, and press AA very quickly to open the geometry options and the material settings. And I'll scroll up in my timeline so I can get to my geometry options. Since both layers are selected, when I make this change, they'll both change. So set an extrusion depth of 40 and press Enter on your keyboard. That has created depth to our object, but we can't really see it yet. So press R to open the rotation orientation settings and click and drag on the Y rotation. I'll drag it to around +29. That's giving me a good view of my 3D object, but I really can't see it until I add a light into the scene. So go up under the layer menu and choose New, Light. For the light, I'll just move the light settings out of the way here. Click on the light type drop down, and let's choose a point light. Set the intensity to 100. We can leave the fall off and cast shadow settings selected, and then click OK. Now with the light in the scene, you can see I actually have true 3D geometry. Press P to open up the light settings and scrub on the Z-axis to move the light either further away or closer to the geometry. Now, whenever you're working in the Cinema 4D renderer, there's one thing to really pay attention to, and that's the final render settings. So go to the upper right corner of the composition panel and click on the wrench icon. Here, under the renderer options, mine was set just to the right of typical. Yours could be set down at draft. I typically work at draft settings as I'm creating animation, and then just before I go to render out my composition, I change this up to just above the middle section here till I see the anti-aliasing switch to best, and I click OK. So there are a lot more settings you could go through within the material options of a Cinema 4D layer, but you understand the basics of creating 3D geometry in Cinema 4D. Illustrator layers can be converted to shape layers, and shape layers can have true depth, and any text layers can also have true 3D created out of there as well.